Okay, I'm Murray Hips, Director of Entrepreneurship for UTS, and I want to stop talking. I might actually ask a few questions first, but I do really want to stop talking because this is going to be an amazing interview. This is UTS Startups Confessions, where we talk to entrepreneurs I respect deeply and try to get out what they've done, what enabled them, what they ran into, so that other people who are future versions of yourself, Naby, might have some chance of becoming you. How does that sound? Sound good?
Sounds exciting, yes.
Okay. Thank you very much for joining. I'll start by asking, who were you before starting Coverhero?
I am still the same person, I would say, in a lot of ways, but I was this very nerdy academic, and you know, UTS is one of those places where I spend a lot of time. I went to uni when I was very young, like 15, and you know, I finished uni when I was 22, and I became an academic when I was 18, and got married, had a baby, and moved to Australia when I was 23, and I was on a scholarship studying French cooking at Le Cordon Bleu, and was working in high-end fine dining restaurants across Sydney, and did a little bit of consulting in luxury resort development and all kinds of stuff, and then got sick of that and went back to academia. So I was working in academia, started my PhD at 27, and then around 30, I quit academia, I quit my marriage, I quit everything I knew before. And then I got into the world of tech. And then I did a whole bunch of startups during that time, failed a couple, worked in corporate innovation, did a travel documentary series, and then 4 years ago, kind of accidentally bumped into insurance, not because I loved it. I started insurance because I hated it. It was a traumatic experience.
Okay, perfect. Tell me more about that. Why did you hate it, and what was the impetus for Coverhero initially?
So like most people, everyone hates insurance. Insurance is boring. It's not a sexy thing. And I was one of those people, and it was 2017, early 2017. I had organized this trip with my boyfriend at the time, and he was turning 40, and we were going to go overseas together, and he got very sick, and I had bought travel insurance and a whole bunch of other stuff. And I was lodging it because the trip got cancelled, and for the first time I had lodged insurance claims in my whole life. And I remember sitting at Hyde Park with a lawyer girlfriend of mine with all of the insurance policies, with the text. I'm just like, what is this? I don't get it. And then having to upload all this documentation to some, portal on the internet somewhere. It was just ridiculous. And I was not in a headspace. I was going between hospital and then trying to lodge insurance claims, and then I just got sick of it and I just left it. And I was like, can't be bothered, it's just too much. So I didn't get any money, so then anyway, long story short, we broke up, and I was heartbroken, and no job, no money, no insurance, no trip. So I was like, okay. And then my co-founder from previous startups, he was working on this insurtech company called Coverhero. I was like, dude, what are you working on at the moment? He was like, oh, we're going to create this like insurance smart wallet. I'm like, I want in. I was like, okay. So I was like, but I don't have the money to fund this thing, so we need to find an accelerator. So we found Qantas Avro Accelerator, so I started hustling my way into, all the info sessions and trying to get myself into the accelerator program. So I went to all the info sessions, we applied, and we got in. So they selected 6 startups and 6 scale-ups. We were the first 6 startups in the program. So that's how we got started, and that was 2017.
Okay, and what was Coverhero back then?
So we were building what we thought would be the world's best machine learning-based recommendation engine that connected all the insurance companies, and we would design this hyper-personalized insurance for customers to buy. So we built a prototype. We were also in TechCrunch Startup Battlefield that year, and we did a demo live. And doing live demos with tech on stage is the most scary thing. It's like, it's way worse than actually building the company. I panicked so much, I remember, in that pitch. And it was a really cool piece of tech that we built, but we didn't know how to scale it. But most importantly, we didn't understand how broken the insurance industry supply chain or the value chain is, how backwards the technology was, or what the technology was. We were just naive tech entrepreneurs wanting to build something cool, so we did it. We were like, who's going to buy it? Oh, it doesn't integrate. Oh, what are we going to do now? So I learned some good lessons about, building product and finding product market fit, and it's hard to, when you spend 12 weeks in an accelerator program on such a high building product and suddenly it doesn't work, and then you're like, now what do we do? You don't want to quit. So for me, it was just figuring out what is the problem in the industry? Like, why is it so complex? Why is it the way it is? And not coming from the insurance background, that was a long, arduous process for me to understand the regulatory landscape, to understand underwriting, licensing, compliance, governance, then product, how product is designed, how it's distributed, how siloed it is. So it took another whole year for me to study the industry before we started building product again. And that was one hell of a journey. I spoke to about 300 insurance executives across US, Europe, Asia, Australia, like one-on-one interviews, all the way from reinsurers to everybody across the supply chain, which was probably could be a PhD, which I should have completed.
InsurTech Australia was around that time, yeah?
Yeah, so they launched in 2018, and we were one of the first companies in the process, and Australia was and still is behind in terms of InsurTech innovation compared to some of the bigger markets and other markets where there is a lot more funding and a lot more startups. But we've come a long way though.
So it sounds like 2 years getting neck deep on understanding, okay, there's a lot of problems in insurance in Australia and globally. What came next?
So in 2018, I was in Munich in this accelerator program called Work 1. So there was like 11 big insurers and working with, Munich Re Innovation Labs, and met some really cool people and met some of the big insurtech companies that have raised a lot of money, taken product to market, and met the founders and learned a lot from them what it takes to build an insurtech. It's not like building a SaaS company. It's more complex, it's capital heavy, and it's regulated. There's so many nuances that you need to understand. And what you think, or how long you think things would take, it takes twice as long. And everything goes a lot slower. Like you can't even go to market without being licensed. So you can't even test your product. Unlike a SaaS product, you can go to market from day one and start testing. Like for us, we had to wait for the licensing to come through before, even go into market. And even in the Australian, fintech regulatory sandbox is just kind of not so relevant for us to do what we wanted to do. So we had to be a full-fledged business even to start testing. So we're still in beta, and like going to be in beta for a long time before, figuring things out. So then in 2019, we got selected into an InsurTech accelerator program in Silicon Valley, Plug and Play InsurTech. So they scout for companies and you pitch, and it's backed by insurance companies. And they select the startups that are solving interesting problems for them, right? So we were selected. So I spent about 9 months in the US, East Coast, West Coast with the accelerator program, spoke to all the top tier carriers over there. So that was a great learning experience to really understand what are the inside problems. Because we understood the outside problems really well, but we didn't understand the inside problems. So then we were able to put like the whole thing together, say, okay, where do we want to play in the market? So I put on my social scientist hat on and took a grounded theory approach into analyzing huge amounts of qualitative data. Like in 10 years, where is the world going to be? What does insurance look like? How would it be distributed? How would it be designed? And what is it that I'm passionate about? Entrepreneurship. And my pain point was, as an entrepreneur, the product that I bought didn't insure me, and therefore there is a huge problem that is worth solving. And financial services market underserves self-employment, like financial services designed by corporates for corporates. So I saw this like big insurance industry problem that needs solving over here. Then there is this customer segment, which are very different. And there's not a lot of data, emerging segment, very let's say, not understood well because it's dynamic and it's changing, but something that I have lived my whole life is being an epic hustler. You know, like I live and breathe this, and there's like a whole heap of people that are in this category. And then we started building Hustle Cover, which is, you know, protecting the income of self-employed people. And interestingly, MasterCard predicts that self-employed economy is going to be more than 50% of the world's working population by 2023. That's like next year.
Raise your hand if you're self-employed. Okay, raise your hand if you're happy with your insurance offering for self-employed people. Yeah, okay, so you can't see that at home, but obviously a problem. How did that progress?
So I came back from the accelerator program end of 2019, and then we were about to go live in January 2020. So I remember we had a soft launch at TEDx Newtown. It was a hectic year. So I was in San Francisco. I flew in for one day to do the TEDx Newtown. We launched our wellbeing platform there. I flew to Hong Kong to speak at InsurTech Insights conference there. Then I flew back to Sydney, and then 2 weeks later was January. And then we launched Hustle Cover in beta to direct-to-consumer market, and then we went into lockdown a month and a half later.
Yeah.
So great time to launch a new product to the market.
Yeah. So what did that do to things?
Well, it was a matter of like, okay, the unpredictability, the chaos of the pandemic, or we're all going to die, you know?
Yeah.
How do we survive going into lockdown and trying to find it? So it was all about survival for the next 6 to 8 months, and making sure, you know, we didn't know what we were going to do, where we were going to go. So everything was like, how do we switch to this new way of working from home, and the lack of social interaction. So it's all a blur. Like 2020 was the year of staying alive.
Yeah.
I think there's a song, right? So 2020 for me, it was just live one day at a time, keep the business alive, keep the lights on. We were very lean, small team. If we can get through this pandemic, then we will have a business, right? So the focus shifted to well-being and mental health. So then we launched the biggest mental health campaign that year in October, this walking challenge to get people out of the house. And entrepreneurship comes with a lot of mental health challenges, something that I very passionately talk about, and a lot of the core philosophies of Coverhero is mental well-being, physical well-being, and financial well-being for self-employed people. So we ran this big campaign to get people walking and you know, taking care of your mental health in October. Then 2020 ended and 2021 came along. We're like, okay, now lockdown is over, let's go. And
Yeah.
So
I remember that feeling, yeah.
we were about to go into fundraising, and it was like, okay, another lockdown. And the second lockdown was worse than the first lockdown, because it was like, it's going to be 1 week, no 2 weeks, no 3 weeks, maybe 4, maybe a month. And I'm like, just make up your mind, give us like a time period, right? So during that time, an interesting thing started happening, because we've had 1 year of doom and gloom over the pandemic coronavirus, then the Great Resignation, and people realizing that the way we were living before is not the only way to live. You can actually have this work-life integration as a model of living your life. And people had the confidence to quit their jobs. People had the confidence to finally become true to who they are and start that, like, living on purpose became an actual thing when you're selecting a job. And, you know, just paying your mortgage and sacrificing your soul wasn't the way people wanted to live anymore, which was a really cool thing that happened that year. And then last year was all these platforms started coming to us, like jobs platforms, banking platforms, saying, hey, your product is really cool. We would love to offer this to our user base. I'm like, huh, interesting. Because we didn't think that as an initial path for distribution. We were like, we're going to go direct to consumer, but then it requires a lot of, you know, marketing capital, which we didn't have. So like, okay, then we started building tech with these platforms, like really trying to understand, okay, what data do you capture? And on top of all of that was the Royal Commission that happened. So insurance industry is frantically, trying to get their shit together before the new legislation kicked in. So like things slowed down. It's the worst year to launch an insurtech, like Royal Commission, post-Royal Commission, the regulatory landscape. Everyone was just very nervous, right? There's a great book called Bunch of Bankers. You should read it. And so we had to like wait as well to see, some of the legislative pieces that were coming in and how it would impact embedded insurance and can we take this product to market. And these are the things that, unless you're from the insurance industry, you wouldn't appreciate how difficult it is to execute on an idea that looks very simple on the outside. Underneath that is like this big iceberg, right? Like you just see this little tip, which is our brand and the website, but underneath that is tech that you have to build to navigate through this insurance, financial services jungle. Unless you're from the inside, you wouldn't know how to navigate it, right? So then we were like, okay, we're going to go B2B to C. Then we started building our API, and just about a month ago, we kind of like, in beta now, and we're doing some testing, and we've got some very exciting things that you will see in the media soon happening.
Normally I start these streams by asking you to give the kind of 10-second version of the company, and there's a reason I didn't, which is obvious from that kind of journey. What is the kind of 10-second version of Coverhero today?
We would say, we're in the market to create work-integrated life insurance, right? This is the way we see it. So we're solving two major problems. One, making insurance accessible and simple and seamless, right? So which is digital distribution or embedded finance or embedded insurance. Leveraging the platforms that users are hanging out or using, leveraging their data to underwrite and insure people in a seamless kind of way. So that's just the insurance distribution problem that we're solving. The second problem is we want to be the #1 platform that services the self-employed economy. Starting from Hustle, which is one of our products. Then we have a whole range of APIs we'll take to market, and we have some cool names like Carbon and Bounce and Wings, and these are all different APIs across the general life health space. So what we look at is we insure human beings and their assets, and we want to be the second category is but self-employed people, right? Because the self-employed risk is different to a corporate person. Their profiles are different, what they do, what they value, all these things are different.
Okay. So I don't think I've met an insurance company or someone within one that doesn't complain about the brokers and the kind of systems that they have to deal with, but obviously that kind of entrenches the industry. What does the world look like in a couple of years' time with Coverhero?
In the segment, we want to be the player where people are going, like if self-employed people would be insured by Coverhero. For their income, for their home, for their health, for their life, whatever it is, right? Like if you're self-employed, go to the bank and get a mortgage. It's going to be very difficult. It doesn't mean they're bad risks. It's just like it's just a segment that is not understood, or we are in the early days of it. But the banking sector will catch up. Insurance sector will also catch up. So for us, distribution. Even for the insurance companies, right? So we're kind of in the middle between the insurer and the distributors. So we're building this platform that connects in the best interest of the customer and in the best interest of the insurer and also the distribution platform. So like really servicing the platform economy and making this super duper seamless. A really good example is think about Shopify or what e-commerce, where e-commerce is today. You can order something this morning, like order a pair of shoes, you'll have it like in the afternoon. This wasn't possible about 10 years ago, right? And insurance could work that way. But not all products, but it's not as complex as, connecting the factory to a design, then to get your pair of shoes to go out on a Friday night. It should be simpler than that, but there's like nuances and regulatory challenges. So you can't put Band-Aid on the value chain to create a new category. So this was our learning. What we wanted to do was way too ambitious than we had the appetite for when we started. But then, 3 years into it, I'm too far into the deep end. I can't pull the plug on this. It's like, I have to go through the tunnel. I can't go back.
But you're 3 years further ahead than everyone else would be.
And I'm like, why did I get into this tunnel? If somebody had told me this was a long, dark tunnel, I would not be in it. I would not even get in. I would not even be in that car. Thanks for my naivety.
Well, yeah, I think we're meant to be encouraging entrepreneurship.
Get in the tunnel, do it.
But it's interesting that there will be people watching this that have kind of platforms that they're working on or are involved with platforms. What should they understand about the opportunity here?
Well, if you are a platform that has, creators or artists and digital marketers, anyone who is self-employed, here's an opportunity to really cater to the needs of your user base by providing services that's going to protect them. So when we say gig economy, people think they're just Uber drivers, right? Or delivery drivers, but that's just one segment of the gig economy. So gig economy, creator economy, passion economy, these are all terms that are used to describe people that leverages their passion and monetizes their passion as a way of life.
So Eddie from BigCommerce, if you're watching, or Design Crowd, or there's a lot of kind of UTS started marketplaces and platforms that are out there.
Yeah, they should plug us in.
Well, they shouldn't spend as much time trying to figure out the insurance world, or
No.
they can do it in 5 years' time.
Yeah, stick to your core proposition and add. I think that's the way the tech industry is going, right? Like you provide a very niche service, and then you dominate that really niche service by plugging yourself into the ecosystem, and then you become very good at be very good at one thing, and then be better than everybody else at that one thing, and then scale it, right?
Yeah, and you will be good at providing those kind of embedded insurance offerings across all these platforms for people that don't have the kind of resourcing a large company would do to figure out their insurance needs.
Yeah, and the thing is, we partner with insurance companies, right? It's not like we are creating our own insurance company and putting this risk capital on our balance sheet, right? So we believe in collaboration. Like, to do that, it's a waste of resources. So we partner with insurance companies that like what we do, and they underwrite the product, and then we distribute it. So it's a win-win scenario for them, for us, for the platform, and for the end user.
Beautiful. Okay, there were some questions I was meant to ask. I'm going to ask one in particular. Someone like yourself with a research background, having this incredible kind of career afterwards. For anyone watching that is a researcher perhaps at the moment, or in academia generally, do you have any advice?
Well, if you are a researcher, you already have the foundation of testing and understanding problems, because as a researcher, you're basically trying to solve problems. You have the framework, right? So building startup is just like doing your research. You are trying to solve a problem and you're finding a solution. The only difference is you have to commercialize it. So as a researcher, you don't really commercialize, write a PhD and it collects dust on some bookshelf somewhere,
But I think when people think of researchers in academia and try to classify them as different somehow to people solving problems in the real world with customers, I think it's kind of missing the point of what research is about and what that skill set can enable. So I think you're a wonderful example of how that can be translated into the real world as a skill set.
I think it's my biggest asset, really, because at uni I was a research methodology and design lecturer, and then I was doing my PhD. So I learned how to do quantitative, qualitative research using various different frameworks and various different lines of inquiry. And I'm like, there is a way to solve these problems. So for example, right, in social science and studying it from a lens of phenomenology and using grounded theory as a framework for me was super duper helpful in understanding things that don't exist today. And like, how do you predict trends, right? If I didn't have that background, I will create something totally different. And because I did have that background, I could look at data and understand it the way that another founder wouldn't have the expertise. They would have to find a co-founder that is from a tech background, but they don't have that lens that I do have, which also forms part of the IP that we designed for Coverhero, like in terms of underwriting and various different other models and personas that we create. So my 15 years of academic life did not go to waste.
To finish up, outside of researchers, there's the general public that are thinking about entrepreneurship. Do you have any advice that you wish someone had given you before you started?
Oh, God. I don't know. Like, the only thing that I can say is if you want to be an entrepreneur, like, be one. Just go out there and do shit, you know? Make mistakes, learn, put some money behind it or don't. Just do it. Like, stop reading entrepreneurship books, just go and hustle.
Yes.
I mean, read it, please do. Talk to people, but just build something, do something, you know? Try and sell something. And that's, to be an entrepreneur, you just have to be one. Stop thinking about it. Get off your butt, go out there and do it.
Okay, I think that's a pretty good note to end on. Round of applause, please. I've got some editing of this video to do. I will say we're going to throw to Q&A from the audience now. For anyone watching, please join us at 3:30 every Friday for two reasons. One, you get to ask your own questions and get really juicy answers that are too juicy for the live stream. And also you won't have to deal with the technology failures that you're dealing with at home. Thank you very much, Naby, for joining us.